Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn Crawford with Hope Dementia Support, and I'd like to introduce you to Melanie Goff of the Goff team of Keller Williams. Melanie will be presenting the challenges of downsizing when your loved one has dementia. So if you would have any questions, please put them either in the chat or in the Q&A, and when we're all finished, we'll be sure that your questions are answered. So I'm going to introduce you to Melanie and let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Lynn. My name is Melanie Goff. I am a realtor who runs a real estate team at Keller Williams Realty. Our team specializes in working with seniors and families of seniors. I am a senior residential specialist with the National Association of Realtors and a senior relocation specialist with Keller Williams. So I work a lot with older people and a lot with people who are in some stage of dementia or Alzheimer's. So today we're going to talk about downsizing and what happens when you need to move and why that might be the case. This is just a little note saying that I am not a legal attorney. I am not a tax professional. So those are the types of people that you do want to seek advice from as you're trying to work through all of these things. So do you have more questions than answers? Is it time to downsize or move a family member with dementia? Are you worried about yourself or a loved one not being safe in your or their current home? Are you wondering how to create a plan for the downsizing process? And that's what I'm here to do today, to help you come up with a plan so that a plan doesn't have to be made in an emergency situation, because a plan has been made when there's time to really think about it and make sure that your loved ones know what you want and that you've had a chance to talk to the seniors in your life, and you can fulfill their needs rather than just reacting in an emergency. So we're going to cover perspective and looking at things, being proactive versus reactive, some common disillusions, 5 conversations that you're going to want to have, senior living options and when you should move, legal documents that you need to have in place ahead of time, the physical and emotional challenges that may come up during this process, especially when you're working with someone with dementia, how to reduce the stress for that person, some downsizing tips and decluttering and preparing to move, and how to make a smooth transition. So some of what I'm talking about today, I teach in just my basic senior relocation seminar, but I'm going to talk a lot about how it specifically works with someone who has dementia. Now, I love this cartoon. I think that many of us have been in this situation, either as the gentleman on the left or the gentleman on the right. And I think having a plan can prevent a mess, whether it's an actual physical mess like this or just not having a way forward. So in my business, I've worked with people that look at things in 3 different ways or some combination. I've had people who look past. They're very much into, they live in the past. They think about and talk about the past. And this actually is true with a lot of people who have dementia. There's people who say, I just want to live the day. I want to be present for the day. And then there's people who look towards the future and they make a plan and they think about what they want their future to be. So I think living in the moment is amazing and awesome. And I think we also need a plan for the future. And so we're going to work through that. So I've also run across people who are proactive and reactive. People who are proactive have things like long-term health insurance and a will or a trust and their documents arranged. They can even go so far as to Emily, who's on my team, and her family have what they call death day parties, where the whole family just sits around and talks about their end of life and what their desires are. So it no longer becomes a taboo subject. They talk about what would happen if they got dementia and how they would want that to play out and where they would want to live. And I think that's a great idea, a great example of being proactive. We're going to talk about some other things you can do to be proactive today as well. There are many situations when I get a phone call because somebody is being reactive. And this is very commonly either myself or one of my loved ones has taken a fall and they've gone to the hospital and it is no longer safe for them to return home. So very much in an emergency situation, we have to have a very reactive response. And I don't think that that's always the best plan. Reactive people, they kind of live in the past. They don't want to accept the inevitable. And by the inevitable, I mean that they're going to need help someday. They don't make decisions and they just let life happen to them. They end up in emergency mode as they react to an issue that arises all of a sudden, like the one that I described. Unfortunately, at that point, the person that has to rush in and make all those emergency decisions is usually a loved one, and they're often very difficult decisions. If someone with dementia is involved, it can be even more difficult if they didn't have those conversations with the person while that person was able to talk to them. It can create undue stress for that person and for their loved ones as they're trying to work through all of those things. Proactive people accept the fact that they're not getting any younger, right? None of us are. They realize that they will likely need some level of care in the future. I would say they should think about the fact that they might get Alzheimer's or dementia someday. If they're not somebody at that stage in their life, you need to think about it for the future and what does that look like and what would you like your care to be and where would you like that care to happen? You might not get that, and that is wonderful, but many of us, I think because we're here, have someone in our life that's happened to. So they plan ahead so the future is smooth. They act on their plan before an emergency arises. They age gracefully with minimal family stress. They protect their loved ones from the stress of caring for them, not necessarily caring for them because we're all going to care for our loved ones, but caring for them in an emergency mode. And they allow their loved ones to live their desired life and not have to rush in this emergency mode. Some common disillusions are that I'm okay and I'm never going to need help. I'm going to live in my home forever. How many times as a realtor have I been told they're going to take me out of my house in a box, right? I'm never leaving. I think many of us know and have experienced loved ones that maybe have said that or thought that, and that was absolutely not the case. So that was not even possible for them in the end. I'll be in the same health condition until the end. I'll just fall asleep one day and not wake up. Well, that isn't normally how it goes. It would be lovely though, so we can all hope for that. My kids will take care of me. My spouse will take care of me. Okay, so someone's going to take care of me. Yes, we may very well take care of each other. I plan on taking care of my parents and my spouse. However, what does that care look like? What is the conversation around that so that those people understand that? And are your kids or your spouse really in a position to take care of you if you're in late stage dementia or Alzheimer's and it takes an immense amount of care? Is that really something that they would be able to do? I don't have enough money to move. Okay. There are many financial options for people. I go through these with people in my one-on-ones with them. What are the options? Seniors have a great opportunity for different kinds of loans. The HECM loan is a wonderful option for seniors. How do you pay for long-term care? There are options for that. So you need to, but there's a lot more options if you plan ahead. I'll be okay at home and I don't need any help. Okay, you don't need any help until you need help. I have a client who I met with about 6 months before the second phone call. And in the first meeting, she said, well, I'm not doing very well. I'm having some falls. So I've got this button that I can wear around my neck. And if I push it, the paramedics will come. She lived by herself. I said, okay. I said, are you thinking about moving someplace that's safer for you? And she said, I'm thinking about it, but I don't really want to do that yet. I really don't want to move. Okay, so we kind of talked through some planning things. The next phone call I got, which was about 6 months later, she was very frightened because she'd taken a fall. She was unconscious. She woke up long enough to push the button and then drifted back into unconsciousness. The paramedics did come, but her fear came because she was thinking about what would happen if she hadn't woke up. Right? If she just remained unconscious, she very likely would have died. And so sometimes when we push things off and we don't implement a plan soon enough, either for ourselves or for our loved one with dementia, we end up in a situation where there's a lot of fear around the move, which can rush things and cause things to not be nearly as comfortable. So conversations that we should be having, if we have someone in our life who has dementia, or we ourselves have been diagnosed with dementia, let's have these conversations as early as possible, where they can still express themselves and what their desires are around these 5 topics, right? So their physical needs. What would you like to happen if you cannot physically take care of yourself anymore? All the way down to you can't get yourself to the bathroom. What do you want that to look like? Who do you want to care for you? Cognitive and mental conversation. What happens if you lose your decision-making ability, or you have dementia or Alzheimer's? What do you want that to look like? Let's talk about that. Emotional and social. What kind of, do you want people around you? A lot of seniors, when they call me, they're living by themselves and they're really craving that society. And they do say that people who have other people around them tend to live longer, healthier lives. So maybe it's not the best idea to leave grandma alone in her house. That's something to think about and have a conversation with her about. What about finances? What does that look like? What kind of insurance do we have? Do we have money put aside? What's the value of your home? What kind of opportunities do you have financially that would allow you to be cared for? So those conversations need to be had. And then familial, who do you want around you? Who in your family do you want making decisions for you? So these are all early conversations, and the person that you ultimately say, this person or this group of people are the ones that I want making decisions for me, they need to know things. They need to understand, where are your financial papers? Where is your safe deposit box key? What do you want to happen if you can no longer make decisions? We're going to talk some more about documents that need to be in place. So conversations that you should be talking about. So how do we know when it's time to move? Whether we have dementia or we're just getting older, there are some things that come up, right? So maybe the house is too big and the kids are grown. We bought the house when the kids were little. They love the huge yard and running up and down the stairs, but now they're at college or beyond. And I don't want to clean all that house anymore. And I don't want to maintain that yard anymore. So is your home too large? Is your yard too large or too much work to maintain? Are you tired of cooking and cleaning? Right? Do you just want to relax as you age and maybe travel or maybe do fun things and activities with your friends or family, and you don't want to clean or cook anymore? I've had seniors just say, I could stay in my home longer if I just had somebody to help me keep it clean. Okay, well, as long as the house is safe for you, there are people out there that can help with that. So let's have that conversation. Does your home have too many steps? This is the biggest issue with a lot of people. As our bodies get older and weaker, if you've got dementia or Alzheimer's, your body also starts breaking down, and stairs can become a real hazard. For some people that are aging, they just become uncomfortable. Their knees hurt or their joints hurt, and they don't want to have to go up and down the stairs. But my biggest concern when I'm talking to people has a lot to do with the safety of them. And because a lot of seniors, this is where the falls occur. And are you living alone and concerned about security or safety? Like my gal who was concerned that no one would find her if she fell down. Or maybe you're worried that somebody knows you're living alone, they will take advantage of that and break into your house. So these are some of the concerns that people have. If you have a loved one with dementia, these things are just made bigger, right? So a lot of times when I go in and I meet with somebody when they have dementia, maybe an older couple, and one of the spouses has dementia or Alzheimer's, it's very hard for the spouse who's caring for them to also care for the house and the yard. And those things tend to be put to the side. So definitely the same kinds of things that people are thinking about. And again, if you can move before someone falls down the stairs, it's a better than when we're in emergency mode because they've fallen down the stairs. Again, just talking about proactive versus reactive. Would you like to make your own decisions? Would you like to talk to your loved one that has dementia? Hopefully early enough in the process. If not, then you're making decisions for them, being proactive, keeping them safe, just having a plan ahead of time. So there's lots of options for where you can move, what can provide that environment that might work for you as a senior or your loved one with dementia. So you can move to a different house, townhouse, or condo. So that would be a house with no stairs or a smaller yard or both. Maybe it's a community of small houses where everybody can interact in a social way, which is great. Some people choose to move in with family and ask their family to care for them. And this works very well for certain people. And I would just say, make sure, in my experience, this works best if that person is being cared for, not just by the person that they're living with or the family they're living with, but the rest of the family as well. That family who's caring for them and living with them will need a break. So please don't just think, okay, my loved one with Alzheimer's is now living with my sister, and so I'm good, right? Your sister's going to need a break and support and help as well. So be there for those people who are caring for their loved ones, whether they're family or friends. Aging in place at home and bringing care in. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, making the current home you have a safer place. Retirement communities. So this is independent living with your food, your cleaning, your utilities paid for, assistance if needed. Okay, and then you can travel and you don't have to worry about your house sitting vacant. It's a good social environment. A lot of seniors really like living in these retirement communities. Then from the retirement community, we often see people transition into assisted living, or maybe they skip retirement community and go right to assisted living, where they can have somebody there that helps them get up or helps them dress or make sure they take their medicine. Then this can also happen in an adult family home. So this would be a smaller environment where you maybe have 6 people living together with a caregiver there. It's more of a family environment. And then there's memory care, where you've got specialized people there to make sure that that person with dementia or Alzheimer's is cared for, and they specialize in that. So let's talk about moving to a different home. We did that a little bit. You can sell and buy or rent a smaller home, no stairs, wider halls and doors. As you're doing this, think about, okay, right now I'm ambulatory, I can walk, everything's good, but in the near future, might I need a cane or a walker or even a wheelchair? Am I going to need wider halls, bigger spaces? Sometimes it's a better use of space than the home that they've had for many years. And there's a lot of times available equity from their current home to move to the new one. There's less stress because there's more to manage in this smaller home or the single level home and with less yard. So comfortable, safer, better fits your needs. Again, you might want to, just as in retrofitting your current home, this home you might also want to retrofit as needed with things like grab bars and safety features that are available out there. Moving in with family. So we have to think about what that looks like as far as safety goes. Is there a single level space for your loved one to live in? Are we going to need to retrofit anything with ramps or grab bars or those sorts of things so that they can be safer? Or are we going to add an ADU? In our community in Clark County, you can add an ADU, and it can be a manufactured home. It can be a separate stick-built building. If you are adding it to a single lot, you just have to check with the county rules based on where you live, whether or not it has to be attached to the house, detached from the house, removable, not removable. There's rules around them. But if you want your loved one to have their own space and privacy, sometimes an ADU is a great idea, and you can check on them. They can join you for meals. They can be part of the family, but still have their own space. If someone has dementia, they may need to be closer to you, and you may need to keep a closer eye on them. So they might actually live in your actual home with you. Aging in place. So if somebody has dementia, this only can work for so long before it becomes unsafe. But if dementia is not there, the home can be retrofitted. You can bring home care in, home health services, adult day services are available. We're going to talk a little bit more about the different kinds of those things. If somebody does want to stay at home, I will tell you that at some point in the aging process, this becomes the most expensive option. I have a client right now who her and her husband insist on living at home. And the only help they really need is for her husband to be able to get out of his chair or out of his bed into the bathroom and back. And they're paying $22,000 a month for somebody to be there 24/7, just for that service. So they are looking at other options now, and I have talked to them about different ways to get that number down. But this can be a very expensive option if the person needs help with some of those most basic needs. So the home care model, that's a private hire, or sometimes there are services for this. They take care of things like bathing, dressing, eating, continence, transferring and toileting, some limited health care. They can take your temperature and check your vitals and make sure you take your medicine. They can help with meal preparation and cleanup and helping with eating if that's needed. Some light housekeeping, walking, moving, using wheelchairs, walkers, and lifts, and then getting you, sometimes they help with transportation, getting you to your shopping or errands or doctor visits. So you can hire services and individuals to help with this. And a lot of times they are trained for this kind of work. So what they call the clinical model then is if you actually need a skilled registered nurse. And this is if you have any kind of intrusion into your body, such as a feeding tube, an IV, wound care, tracheotomy, then the regular social home care services don't really provide that. You'd have to go to the next level. This is yet again more expensive. I'm not an insurance expert, but from what I understand, if you want Medicare reimbursement, you do have to be homebound. It requires a physician's prescription for that care. It's usually up for about 100 days a year for a specific health event. So maybe you've had a surgery or you've taken a fall and you're rehabilitating. And then long-term health care insurance can cover this, but you'll want to check and see what they cover specifically. And usually both Medicare and long-term care insurance do require a licensed agency to do that. Okay, so retirement communities are usually run on a monthly rental situation. There's usually not a large entry fee or a really long-term commitment normally. Many have both independent and assisted living services, so you could move from one to the other if you needed to, and some even have a memory care component. So it may not be in the same building, but nearby. So you might be able to kind of stay within the same community as you age. Adult family homes are another great option. We talked about that. That sort of smaller, more home-like environment, more family-like environment. And these are sometimes available for assisted living or memory care. So again, in that retirement community, what are they charging you for? When you're doing the numbers with your family and your advisors, just remember they're going to cover your meals, your security, your maintenance, your utilities, the programs, entertainment, and activities. And then a lot of them have some sort of fitness component, like a pool or a library. I guess that's not really fitness for your brain, and fitness centers. So if you're paying for any of those things individually, as well as your home, you're not going to have to buy groceries. You're not going to have to pay for utilities. So just think about that, because when that number comes in for these communities, it feels very high. And you'll want to make sure you're really comparing everything you're currently paying for with what you're getting. So the most important thing here is to have a plan. And I will tell you a little story. I'm involved in a situation right now where the wife is in memory care with severe dementia, late term. She's no longer able to sign any sort of legal documents. The husband is a very sound mind. He's very sharp, but he's been diagnosed with cancer and is very, very sick. He took a fall in his home, went to the hospital. That's where they discovered the cancer. And they said, you can't really go home without care. And he said, okay, then I want to be with my wife. So he moved into his wife's room at the memory care community and is bedridden. And he called me as his realtor and asked me to sell his house. His wife is still on title for the home, and nobody has a power of attorney for her. So nobody can sign any documents in her name. and she cannot sign any documents. So there is a niece involved that is trying to help coordinate all of these things that they didn't have a plan for. And she is having to try and figure out how to get a guardianship for the aunt so she can sign paperwork for her. And this is at the very end of his life. And so he wants something to happen very quickly, but it's not possible because the plan wasn't put in place early enough. So this is an example of why you need to meet with advisors ahead of time who've been through this with other people and understand what needs to happen. So for example, do you have a will? My parents in their 80s, they did not have a will until last year. I've had a will since I was very young, but I realized that I hadn't looked at it since my daughter was born, and my daughter is a senior in high school now. So I pulled out my will and she's not in it. So there's some things that need to be updated. Your documents need to be reviewed periodically. Is your will specific? Is there something in your home that's very valuable that you want to go to a certain person? And is that specified in your will? Another option that really helps the people who are left behind when you pass is a trust. If your home and other assets are in a trust, they do not have to go through probate. So the trustee can simply fulfill your wishes in your will and that you've shared with them. And there's no probate that can take months or even years to sort through. There's no family dispute. So that really can help speed things along. It's much less of a hassle and much less expensive as far as attorneys go for your loved ones who are trying to sort through everything after you've passed away. So a trust is a great idea. You'd want to talk to a trust attorney to put that together, and it's not difficult. A durable power of attorney. Who can sign for you if you can't? Maybe because you're unconscious, maybe because you have dementia or Alzheimer's, maybe because you're at the end of life and you can no longer make decisions for whatever reason. Who has the right to make decisions for you? Wouldn't you like to figure that out now before it's too late and there's a big mess because nobody can sign anything for you and you can't sign for yourself? So figure out who you would like to be able to do that and make sure that you have an attorney write up a durable power of attorney that covers all aspects of your world, your financial world, your real estate world, your health. And if you want those decisions, different decisions to go to different people, now is the time to figure that out. If you have a loved one that's struggling with dementia, now is the time to get these documents taken care of, either through the courts, if that person can no longer sign a power of attorney, or if they're in very early stages, while they still have the cognitive ability to sign papers. An advance directive. What do you want the end of your life to look like? This is very important. Hope did an advanced directive workshop like the one I'm doing now a few months ago. It was wonderful, and it made me, they're different in different states, those documents. It made me pull the one up for Alaska where my parents live, print them all out, get in an airplane and fly to Alaska and tell my parents, my mom, who is in relatively early stage dementia, she can still make decisions. What do you want the end of your life to look like? And my dad, and have them sign those. And I was very surprised by what they told me. So it might not be what you think. And to do one for yourself. Have a conversation with the people that matter most. The people who are going to make decisions for you need to understand what decisions you want them to make. And if you can do this earlier rather than later, this is part of those death day parties. This is part of those 5 conversations we talked about earlier in the seminar. Have those conversations early. And then who should you meet with? You need to meet with an attorney. You need to meet with a trust attorney, maybe an elder law attorney. I think Joshua Pop did the advanced directive class that I took. Wonderful information. These people have seen it all. They know what it's going to look like, and they know what you need to do to prepare. And then who should you meet with, after that? So we've got our attorney taken care of. We've got our, we're going to meet with our CPA and make sure our finances are in order. Maybe with our investment banker, if we have investments. You should meet with your realtor, meet with somebody like me that can tell you how can this flow as you get older. And my conversation might be with, well, you've got a lovely small single level home with not a lot of yard. You could probably stay here a really long time. Let's talk about organizations that can come in and put in grab bars and make it safe. Or I might talk to you about types of mortgages that you would qualify for, even though you don't have a lot of income. I might talk to you about how to work with your person in your family who has dementia or who needs a wheelchair. So, and then the other person that you're going to meet with and talk to is probably a medical professional if you are working with somebody who has dementia. So this is the time to have a plan. So let's just talk about the challenges of leaving a long-term home. So a lot of seniors that I work with have been in their home quite a while, and some of them have dementia or their spouse has dementia. And there's some barriers here, and a lot of them are more emotional than physical. So let's talk about a few things. One of them is not being rushed, not having this happen really quickly. I have a client right now who has Parkinson's, and his family is very nervous for his safety, and rightly so. But it takes him a long time to form words. He's very mentally sharp, but getting the words out are very difficult for him. So they frequently don't stop long enough to listen. And I think that if they had, it would have helped them understand better what his wishes were. So one thing I would just encourage people, if you're working with someone who has dementia, Parkinson's, or they're just elderly and their minds aren't working quite as quickly, or their words aren't forming quite as quickly, slow down. Sometimes as younger people, they just want to run in and say, all right, I've got a plan, let's do it, let's get it over with, I've got other things to do. And that just creates an incredible amount of anxiety and emotional challenge in the future as you progress through your plan. So remember that items and spaces have memories attached. If you're working with someone with dementia and there's something that brings them joy or allows them to recall memories, make sure that that is something that goes with them early in the plan, that is something that isn't lost in the shuffle. If it's early stage, or it's just a senior who's moving to a better environment, let's talk about those things that are most important. And remember that seniors may have limited energy, and people with dementia, their energy might come at different times of day than a regular daylight cycle that some of us live by. So remember, figure out when they have the energy to really think about this and talk about it. Remember that boxes, paper, rolls of bubble wrap can be very dangerous. They're tripping hazards. They fill up spaces that aren't normally filled. We'll talk a little bit later about the order of events and when this sort of thing can happen. There can be a lot of anxiety in moving to an unfamiliar space. So how can you alleviate that? By making sure that there are items already there that they are familiar with. There's a lot of sadness that I see when seniors are moving a long-term home, and this ties back to the memories attached to the spaces. So be aware and comfort and love the people while you're doing it. Feeling rushed, we talked about that. That is not going to work for them. If you rush them, it is not going to work. Feeling that someone is taking control of your life. None of us want that. Whether you have dementia or not, nobody wants someone to take control of their life. I had a couple who I was called in after the family had moved them to a senior community. It was done in a very rushed way. They were very concerned with the health and safety of the mother. And they basically came in, packed a suitcase, picked them up one day and took them to an adult family or an adult senior community. And when I met with them, they were still of sound mind, just not sound body. And so I met with them about listing their home, which is what the family wanted me to meet with them about. And the mom just kept saying, what's happened to my organ? She was an organist at her church. She'd played her organ her whole life. And nobody had taken a moment to say, what would you like to happen with your organ if it can't go with you? And every time I met with them to sign papers, she asked about her organ. And I asked the daughter, I said, you need to talk to her about what happened to the organ. I think it was donated to a church, which probably made her happy, but nobody should have to be dealing with that kind of uncertainty or somebody taking control of an important piece of their life. Don't lose track of important items. I had a gentleman who, it was my gentleman with Parkinson's, and nobody was listening to him. So I sat down with him, and one of the caregivers in the home sat down. Well, there's a lot of rush and moving and packing and stuff going on around us. And I just sat down and looked at him because he was trying to say something. And I just listened for a minute. And he said, I want my award. Don't forget my award. And I said, okay, tell me about your award. What does it look like? And he said, it's my award from Nike. So he must have gotten some sort of business award when he worked for Nike. And so the caregiver and I are listening very carefully. And I say, is it a statue? Is it a plaque? No, 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 no. It takes him a little while. And he says, it's a tape. So come to find out, it was a VHS tape of him getting the award that he wanted us to find. So I said, okay, great. Do you know where it is? The house is in chaos at this point. And he said, it's in the garage next to the shoe polish. And I said, okay. And he gave us a few more directions, and we were able to go into the garage and fairly quickly actually find a VHS tape that said Nike award. And I brought it out and I showed it to him. Is this it? And his face just lit up. Of all the items in their house, that was the only thing he cared about. I don't think he'd ever watched it recently. It was packed away in a box somewhere, but it was important to him to have that. So we need to stop and listen about what are the items that are important. Because remember also, they're downsizing. So there are going to be a lot of items that are not going. Let's see. Then deciding what to do with the items and letting them go. There's a great book I've got on my shelf over here called Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. I think I might have it actually on the next slide or on one of these slides. It was written by Matt Paxton, who I've never seen it, but I think there was a show on TV called Hoarders, and he ran that show. And he wrote a book, and it's a wonderful book. I would highly recommend anyone read as they're thinking about downsizing, called Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. And so deciding what to do with items, what to take. I love this picture of this woman. I helped a woman move one time who was an artist, and she had a huge bonus room on her second level that was her art room, and it was filled with art supplies. And she was downsizing to a less than 500 square foot room in a senior living community. And she lived currently in about a 3,000 square foot house. Very little of her art supplies were going to go with her. And she took probably 3 months to go through everything in that room and narrow it down to one small box. And she could do that because she planned ahead of time and she wanted to take the time. So if you have time, this can be really helpful. Reducing the stress for the person with dementia in a move. All right, so let's talk about somebody who is not early stage. This is middle to later stage. And so what's going to happen if they're in the home during all of this is it just is going to create a lot of emotion and anxiety. So if there's any way that a trusted friend or relative can be with that person during the moving process, preferably somewhere away from the house, that is a great idea. If the person is in danger of tripping or falling, that is also a really good, it's also a really good idea to sit them down somewhere and let them be a part of it if they can be, but don't let them walk around too much. Again, the packing process especially can be very hazardous with stuff everywhere. I said schedule a photo shoot. This can help to some degree with some people to have a memory shoot, a memory photo shoot. And this is where you have a photographer shoot pictures of important people, items, memory, places, and put them in an album that person can refer back to or have with them, rather than taking the actual item. Or, you know, they can just have a book of the pictures of those things. So move the person with dementia first and bring their most important items. So this comes down, we're going to talk about order of events in a minute, but what are those things that bring the person joy and comfort? And those should be moved to their new home. And then the person moved to their new home. And then everything else in the house dealt with. Okay, so that tends to be the best order, that is in my experience. So have conversations early in the process to help determine, when you're talking to the person, what would be really important for you to take to your next home. I've had people, these are examples of things that people have said, right? I want to make sure that the family quilt that's been in our family for generations goes with me. My photo albums, certain books, certain pieces of art or photographs to hang on walls oftentimes. So what brings them comfort, and especially for that person with dementia, what helps them remember? So though those are important things to move first. Here's your order of events. If possible, and this isn't always possible, and I completely understand that, especially when you're working with a person with dementia, get them moved to the new place with everything that they're wanting or that you think that they should have. That's the first thing, step one, okay? Then we have a discussion with them if they're able, but a family discussion about the removal of items that are wanted by loved ones, okay? So oftentimes I hear the senior who's moving, when I'm gone, I just want the family to come in and take whatever they want. Okay. That should be a discussion ahead of time about how that's going to flow and what's going to happen if more than one person wants something. So this is where some disputes can arise. So if a senior can make a list of what goes to whom ahead of time, that can be huge, right? Then there's no family discussion, or there's family discussion, but there's no argument. And so then the family can come in, take the things that they want. And to be honest, a lot of times there's not a lot of stuff that the family wants. So you're just left with a house full of stuff that nobody really wants. So the person who's moving, the senior, has taken what they want. The family has taken what they want. And now we do an estate sale, or for higher value items, they might go to consignment. I've got a family that I'm working with right now that has some extremely expensive art that may be shipped to Sotheby's. So what's happening with the people, right? With the stuff that they've left behind. But usually there's a lot of stuff that's just estate sale: clothes, dishes, cleaning supplies, office supplies, furniture that wouldn't fit and nobody wanted. Estate sales are great for that. Estate sale people come in, they sell everything, they give the owner of the home or the items a check, they keep a percentage, and they remove anything that's left over. So you're left with an empty house that's ready to clean and prep for sale. And that might mean some repairs, or it might just be cleaning. So we'll talk a little bit about how to get top dollar for a house in a minute. So some downsizing tips. If you are one of those fabulous people who plan ahead and are making a plan, it's time to start decluttering, right? So in Matt Paxton's book, Keep the Memories, Lose This Stuff, he talks about a 10-minute sweep. Seniors especially, their energy can be lower, but even younger people who work all day and or take care of kids or whatever, they just don't have a lot of energy to go through all the stuff. So what he suggests, he calls the 10-minute sweep. And that just says that once a day or once a week, whenever you put it on your calendar, for 10 minutes, you work on one piece of your home and decluttering it. It could be one bookshelf. It could be one drawer. But what happens is that over time, with enough of these, you get through a whole room and then another whole room and so forth, so that by the end you're done, you've gotten rid of everything you don't want anymore. Everything is very tidy and organized and clean. It's an awesome idea. Some people say that it's a great idea when you're doing downsizing, cleaning, and decluttering to start in a bathroom, because bathrooms have fewer emotions. And when I think about that, I think about this white cabinet I have in my bathroom that I never look in the back of, but I know that there's a bunch of expired medicines and first aid supplies that could very easily be taken out of there and gotten rid of. Just a note, if your loved one has a lot of prescriptions that they're no longer taking or that have expired, please don't dump them in the toilet or the sink or anything. Those can actually be taken to, I know that the pharmacy at Kaiser's building in Salmon Creek, I know for sure, has a big bin with a pull down lid, almost like a mailbox that you can put expired and old medicines in. So you can, and I'm guessing that most pharmacies would know where you can dispose of those. So be thinking about that. Set up decluttering rules. So 2020 rule for maybe items. Somebody told me this and I just think it's a great idea. Getting rid of anything that would be take less than 20 minutes or $20 and $20 to replace. You haven't used it in a long time, but you might use it someday, but it would take less than 20 minutes and less than $20 to replace. That's something you can get rid of. I need to talk to my husband about that one. Focus on one space or one room at a time. This is vital. My gal that was the artist, she spent 3 months on her art room and the rest of her house took her about a week. So especially those rooms that have a lot of important things in them, either memory-wise or value-wise, one room at a time. Measure furniture and the new space, leaving room for walker or wheelchair if needed. So we're going to talk a little bit about senior move managers and some of the things they do. And one of the things they do, but if you're not using one, you should do yourself, is make sure that whatever home you're moving to, the furniture you want to bring will fit. So take a tape measure when you're going to the new space, measure. Make sure that if you put the bed, the 2 dressers, the 2 nightstands in the bedroom, that you still have room for a walker or a wheelchair to go around and turn around and come back. Make sure that in that living room at the senior community, that there's room for your sofa and your dining table. Oftentimes there is not room in those places for a standard dining table. So before you move the furniture there and then get it there and say, oh my goodness, this doesn't fit, take a minute and use a measuring tape and make sure, draw a little sketch, make sure that's going to work. This is really important with those people with dementia, that we're trying to bring the things that they're familiar with, but make sure that they have space to move. Or any senior, we don't want them falling down. 4 piles of stuff, they call it the sort system. This is another great thing to keep in mind. Sell, offer, retain, or trash, right? 4 piles. We're going to sell it. It's an item of value. We're going to offer it to a family member, your church, or donate it to a charity. We're going to keep it and take it with us, or we're going to throw it away. There's really not any other options, so everything should fall in one of those categories. Tips: work through one room at a time, which we talked about, starting with the easiest, least cluttered. So it could be the bathroom you start with, or it could be just, a lot of people start with the guest room because nothing ever happens in the guest room and there's not much in it. It's very simple to pack that room up. Box up and label paperwork to review after your move. Something that people oftentimes get very bogged down in is they're helping somebody with dementia move, somebody who doesn't have the ability to help them through the paperwork anymore. So they're trying to look at one piece of paper at a time. What I suggest is, if the goal is to get the person moved and into a safer environment, take all of those papers and put them into a file box and take that someplace safe to go through later at your convenience. Don't try to go through that while you're trying to pack everything else and organize everything else to move. There's going to be a lot of just junk paper in there, but there's going to be a lot of important stuff. And also the opposite of that, if you just start tossing stuff out of drawers and files, you may lose something valuable. So put that into a box, move it someplace safe where you can go through it at your leisure and make sure you're not throwing anything important away, that you're shredding stuff that has personal information on it, etc. So when you're leaving a house, if you're leaving it with furnishings in it, and this is going to be a conversation with your realtor. So your realtor is going to say, yes, you have some lovely items here. Let's use them for staging. And they will walk through with you what items those are. Then you're going to leave 3 or less items on any surface. If you're decluttering to sell your home because you need the funds from your home to pay for your move, and you're changing around the order of events, again, your rule is 3 things on any surface. So you can be thinking about that. So you have the person with dementia move to a safer place, and you've done your estate sale. And now you're thinking about, how do I increase the value of the home so that that person or your loved one can get as much money as possible out of it, or you if it's your home. So the first thing obviously is decluttering and depersonalizing if you're there. By depersonalizing, I mean all those family photos that are lined up the stairwell. Those just need to be bubble wrapped and put someplace for the move. We're going to make sure that the buyer can visualize themselves and their stuff in your house. So you don't want to distract them with your personal items. You're going to depersonalize, declutter, deep clean. Hopefully this happens after everything's been moved out. And usually that includes windows and carpet. Simple updates such as window coverings, throw pillows, fixtures, bed coverings. I'm not talking about a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel. Talk to your realtor about what you would actually get a return on. And a lot of times that's eye candy, right? Like a pretty bed cover or throw pillows on the sofa, those kinds of things that aren't very expensive. Sometimes paint can help, and paint can be fairly inexpensive. But again, talk to your realtor first before you do that. Obvious repairs, things that will keep it from financing. So if your roof is at the end of its life, we're going to talk about that, or if there's a leak. If you have mold in the attic or water in the crawl space, those are big things that come up. There may be some other things that as you do a walkthrough with your realtor, they're going to say that's going to come up in the appraisal or inspection. Doing things in your yard, because remember, that's what people see first when they're coming to look at the house. So a yard cleanup, pruning, some fresh flowers planted in the ground, some color, that can really help. So just a few ideas. And again, you're going to be talking to your realtor about this, and they're going to give you lots of great ideas. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about a group of people that are available to help with all of this that I've just gone through. And they're called senior move managers. I've worked with one quite a bit here in town. They plan, schedule, and coordinate the details of the move. They help you downsize and declutter. They help you decide what you'll want to take and need to take. I will say that these are some of the kindest, most soft-spoken people. They take the time to really listen to the person they're helping, and this is their job. Sometimes as family members, we're in a hurry because we have to pick up the kids, or we have to make dinner, or we have to go to work. This is these people's job. They will sit there and talk to the person and make sure they understand their desires if you don't have time. They're going to create a floor plan of your new home, and then they are going to help you figure out where the sofa is going to go, if the dining room table will fit, if there's enough room around the bed, if you put the dresser there or there. They do that. They're going to schedule and oversee packing, moving, and unpacking. They're going to make sure the new place is completely unpacked and everything put where you want it before you go there, or before your loved one goes there. And whether you use a senior move manager or not, this absolutely has to happen, because you don't want somebody walking into their new house and tripping over a box or falling down. So they're going to set up your new home. And then that transition stress for both the family and the senior gets greatly reduced. I don't know about removed, but greatly reduced with these lovely folks. So they are typically paid by the hour. They will give you a bid if you tell them what you want them to do. If you don't have family to do this list of things, or your family doesn't have time to do this list of things, this might be a great option for you. There's a lot of local resources, especially as you're helping somebody with dementia through this process. Hope is obviously supporting this event today, and they do dementia support and have lots of resources when you're working through helping someone with dementia. CDM and other adult day services. Remember, I said it might be helpful to move that person with dementia to an adult day center while you're working on getting things packed and moved. There are placement agencies that can help you find a great, safe environment. There are senior move managers, which I talked about. Obviously, trust attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors, making sure that you have enough money and to get you through your life. These people are really going to be important. So senior real estate specialists like myself can help you with the real estate side of things. And I help people with a lot of these other things too, finding those resources. Obviously, movers, packers, and estate sale representatives are going to play a role in this process. Smooth transition. So how do we make it as smooth as possible? You know where you or your family members are going. This comes from having a conversation early on. Would you like to move to a larger residential community for seniors? Or would you prefer to be in an adult family home with just a few people in more of a smaller house family environment? Those are discussions you should have. Do you want to live in your current home or in a safer version of that, say a single level home, as long as possible before moving to one of these communities? Or are you kind of excited about not living by yourself and living in an independent living situation? These are all conversations that you should have early on. Discuss with the people that matter to you. Pace yourself, give yourself the time you need. The lady who wanted to spend 3 months going through her art room, that's fine. That's okay. Give yourself the time you need. Decide what will happen to the important items that can't be taken to your next home. Is there somebody particularly that you would like to have an item? Do they want it? Have you talked to your family about who wants that painting, or who wants the table that was hand carved by Uncle George, or, you know, those kinds of things? Have those conversations and know where those are going. And then most importantly, write it down. Write it down. Surround yourself with a team of skilled advisors and helpers in addition to your loved ones, right? Your loved ones need to know also who your advisors are. So keep a list of those. Your loved ones, let's say that you take a fall and it's decided that you can never go home again. Whoever your power of attorney or your loved one is that's supporting you through that process needs a list of your CPA, your financial advisor, your attorney, your elder care attorney, your medical professionals and insurance specialists, your realtor. You know, this gentleman who moved in with his wife at memory care, he had my card in his Rolodex from when we met some time ago. Make sure your loved ones know who your people are that you want them to work with. And then, very important, I think I've said this like 10 times now, make sure someone unpacks and sets up at the new home for your loved one or yourself. I say that because when you look at the statistics, there are many, many times when somebody falls down upon moving into a new home because there is stuff everywhere. So make sure that doesn't happen. Schedule and plan. So, you need to set up strategy sessions with those people we just talked about. I do free private strategy sessions regarding the real estate side of things. I have lists of those kinds of advisors that work with seniors that I share with people. I often am meeting with people 6 months, a year, even 2 years before they actually make a move, helping them make sure they have a plan and that their family understands what the plan is. So make sure you're setting up a discussion, a strategy session with people who are going to be helping you and advising you through the process. That's it. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Hope, for inviting me. I do volunteer at Hope as well. It's an incredible organization. If you have an opportunity to take advantage of their services or volunteer, they're a wonderful group of people with big hearts. So thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. I don't want you to think that you're going to get away without questions, though.
That is okay. I'm trying to figure out, do I need to shut the screen off?
No, you're fine. You're
Okay.
fine.
Great.
So, are there downsides to downsizing? That's not easy to say.
Oh, sure. I mean, there are downsides to downsizing. If you think about it, if you like to have family Christmas at your house every year, it might have to be somewhere else. You know, some of the senior communities, their apartments are between 400 and 700 square feet. You can't bring all your stuff, right? If you're somebody who loves all your stuff, you're going to have to make some decisions. But in the end, if you're safer and or more comfortable, I think the advantages at some point outweigh the disadvantages. Did that answer the question?
It did. So, what are some things you might say should never be done or should be cautioned about when thinking about downsizing?
Well, let's see. Things that are not a good idea. Well, part of the reason I'm here today is because I really don't like it when people have to downsize in an emergency. That should never happen. There should always be a plan ahead of time. And I don't think it should ever be done that somebody is injured in their home before they downsize. as far as I think it is very important that people really weigh their options as to whether they're going to the type of home they're moving to, because I think there can be mistakes made there. So is moving to a single level home with a smaller yard the right thing? Or do you still want a big home? It just doesn't need to have stairs. So maybe we don't want a smaller home. Maybe we just don't want stairs. Or I'm alone now. My spouse has passed away. Is it a really good idea for me to move somewhere where I'm going to be alone? Probably, statistically, they say, no, that's not healthy at all. So it might be better to go into a community. So I think that mistakes can definitely be made. If you've got advisors around you, fewer mistakes will be made.
Are there other options besides downsizing? And I think you just described some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it about your current house that makes you uncomfortable or unsafe, right? So maybe you love cleaning house, right? And it's part of your routine and part of who you are. And you don't care that your house is 3,000 square feet. You just can't climb the stairs anymore. So great, let's find you a 3,000 square foot single level home. Or maybe you've always been surrounded by your dogs, and a lot of senior communities allow you to bring a pet or a small pet or maybe a couple pets, but you can't bring your Rottweiler and your Doberman Pinscher and your big dogs, your big German Shepherds, and you couldn't possibly go somewhere without them because you love them so much. And but you're not safe in your current home. So we move you to a single level home with a big yard, and we make sure there's ramps and grab bars and other things so you can stay there as long as possible. So that's one example. We talked about moving in with family and ADUs, additional dwelling units that are near your family. You can have someone come live with you. You can have a roommate, right? Sometimes that can give you companionship if that's what you're needing, or can keep an eye on you. So in case you fall down, they see that happens. There are even organizations that you can give someone room and board just to come live with you and make sure that you're safe. So yeah, there's a lot of options, I would say.
And can you clarify the difference between an ADU and the hardship buildings that they used to be able to put on property?
Yeah.
I think they still can.
Mm-hmm. So on some properties, you're allowed to move a movable home. So like a manufactured house that is not secured necessarily to a foundation. It could be driven on and off. It's supposed to be transferable, and you're allowed to have a senior person that you're caring for live in it, or somebody who is mentally disabled that needs somebody to keep an eye on them. There's other reasons you're allowed to have them. So that is, and you apply for a hardship permit that allows you to put that second dwelling, removable dwelling, on a property that is only supposed to be there until that person no longer needs it. So they pass away or they move to senior living or whatever, and then it's supposed to be removed. A lot of people in our county never remove them. They just leave them there forever. That's not the way it's supposed to work. An ADU is actually a permit to build a permanent additional dwelling unit on the property. And depending on what city you live in within the county, or if you're in the county jurisdiction, different rules apply to what that looks like. But it can be a permanent dwelling that's there forever.
So I have family that should not be in their home as it exists because they have a stairs and they have issues. How do you recommend that I start a conversation?
Well, I think that the first conversation, and I've been brought into some of these conversations, is to ask them if they feel safe and comfortable in their home as it is right now. And I think something that we do have to remember, as much as we love these people, is that if they're of sound mind, they still get to make their own decisions, and they're not always the best decision, but they have the right to do that. We can't take that right away from them. So ask them how they're feeling about their house. Do you feel safe? Is there anything we could do to help you feel more safe in your home? And that's the beginning of the conversation. And then it can go to having those conversations about the future. And again, you're going to run into people who want to live in the past or the present and not look at the future, but having those conversations and just say, hey, I would love to have a conversation with you about the future. My husband and I have been talking about that as well, and what we want our senior days to look like as we age and as everybody needs assistance, what that would look like. What would happen if one of us got dementia or Alzheimer's? What would we like that to look like? And I was thinking mom and dad or aunt and uncle or whoever you're talking to, that we should probably have that conversation too. You know, it's just beginning a conversation. If you grow up with, you know, like Emily on my team, you grow up with death day parties and the conversation's already been had. That's awesome. But so many people, that is not the case. So making it something about you, like here's something we've been doing. I went to a class about aging and the options for homes as we get older. See, a lot of elderly people, when we start talking about options for other places to live, their mind jumps immediately where? To a nursing home. Right, to a nursing home. And they've had relatives in places that they visited and they are terrified by them. They smell bad. There's people screaming. They just have these memories and these visions of these sorts of things. And it might be worth just saying, oh my goodness, we've decided to go tour this, let's say the Watermark over in Portland, which is just a beautiful new senior community, or one of our local community independent living places here. Let's go take a look at that and see what it looks like. You know, I've heard they have a pool and, have you thought of downsizing? I know that you're having a hard time with the yard work. Unfortunately, some of these people will not be willing to have that conversation until there's some sort of incident. Somebody falls, somebody hurts themselves. But if you can get them to open up and start talking before an accident happens, that is so much better. Again, these are adults of sound mind, and they have every right to make their own decisions, but maybe they don't understand the options. Maybe I think that this class that I just taught was videoed and is going to be available on YouTube or something. Maybe say, hey, I just went to this great class. I think that everybody should see this class as they get older. Can we watch it together? I don't know if this would answer all their questions or encourage them to open up and talk, but it might.
It might.
Yeah.
So when someone wants to stay in their home as long as possible, what other than a crisis do you hear is the decision point for moving?
Well, sometimes it's fear motivated. They're afraid, right? And they can be afraid for several different reasons. They can be afraid because they fell down and couldn't get up. Maybe they didn't hurt themselves, but it took them a long time to figure out how to get off the ground, right? Or maybe they heard somebody in the backyard and it was nighttime and they were frightened because they were alone. Okay, so I've gotten calls about fear, right? I don't want to live by myself anymore. Or fear for a loved one. So maybe everything's going along fine, but the wife noticed the husband has been stumbling and she's really nervous that he's going to fall down or hurt himself. General sort of health and well-being. People, other reasons for moving are that people are thinking ahead. they have a plan, you know, at 62 or 65 or whatever it is, they're going to get a HECM loan on their, and they're going to buy a single level house, or they're going to, you know, or they're going to move to an independent living community because they want to travel and they're worried about leaving their vacant house sitting there. So sometimes it's for good reasons. It's time to downsize. The kids are gone. We hope they never come back. I don't, or at least not for the long term. So we're going to get rid of their bedrooms. I've heard that. So yeah, a lot of times people, their priorities change. So instead of yard work, they want to go sailing in the Bahamas, right? And so sometimes it's positive things. It's not always negative.
Can you describe the HECM loan that you mentioned previously?
Yeah. So again, I'll just clarify this by saying I'm not a loan professional, but this is a loan product that allows a senior, you have to be a senior, and I don't remember the age cutoff exactly, 60 something, to, it's sort of a fairy godmother of reverse mortgages. It's federally backed. You can live in your house as long as you want. You can use it to buy the house you're downsizing to, if you have a significant down payment from the house you're selling. And it has a lot of really positive things about it that are sometimes when people think of reverse mortgages, they have a lot of worries about, and this particular type of loan answers almost all of those. So if somebody's interested in that, I would put them in touch with one of my HECM loan specialists to kind of just go through the details of that. So they should just give me a call and I'll get them in touch with them, because you never have to make another house payment. You can if you want, but you don't have to. And a lot of seniors on limited income, their only equity, their only savings is in their home. So if we can sell their family house, the house they've been in forever, and use that equity and a HECM loan to buy a single level safer home, this oftentimes works really well for them, and they're not as financially strapped as they were, because often our house payment is our biggest issue as we get older.
And the difference between the reverse mortgage and the HECM loan, it sounds like the HECM is a type of reverse mortgage.
It is a type of reverse mortgage. And I will tell you that the fact that it's federally backed makes it different than some. And the way they formulate, you can draw money out of it, almost like you could get an advance on your home equity. You can pull some money out if you need it, and a lot of people will do that if they're needing to pay for in-home care, right? So when you get to the end and you have to sell the house if you're not going to live in it. So if you move to senior living, or you pass away in the home, then the house does have to be sold or refinanced out of the HECM loan. And oftentimes people are worried that their heirs will end up having to pay something. That is not the case with the HECM loan. Again, more of those details can be strategized with Michelle over at Fairway or Travis over at Academy Mortgage, somebody who's a specialist in that type of loan. I think Travis actually might be on here today. He can probably answer that question better than me, but if you call me, I will get you a phone number for somebody who can answer those questions.
Thank you. One last thing is that sometimes people have things that are of a lot of value, and they know that they don't have space, or they really don't want to hang on to them. So do you have an idea of who you might refer for them to come in and appraise and help sell? I heard you mention Sotheby's, but
right. So yeah, absolutely. Depending on what the item is, the people I was talking about in that particular situation, it was artwork. And items of very high value, there are definitely appraisers. I know art appraisers. It depends on what they have of value. And there are different organizations. A lot of times we don't have somebody right here in Vancouver for those kinds of things, but Portland has a lot of options for that. So really high value art and other things that you want auctioned. Sotheby's and other collectible resellers, and I'm talking like high-end collectible resellers, they can often help you arrange to get it appraised and get it transported for auction.
Okay, great. Thank you, Melanie, so much. I don't know about everybody else, but I learned a ton.
Oh, good.
And I appreciate it. So what I would like to be able to do, let's see, can you stop share for a second here?
Maybe, let's see here. If I escape there and I go here.
I have to ask Julie to let me share. I just wanted to share our, we have a kind of exciting thing coming up and I wanted to share the flyer for it.
Okay, hold on just a second and I will see if I can figure out how to, oh, I bet I need to go back here.
Melanie, there should be a stop share button.
Yeah,
the
there
top.
normally is, and I'm looking for it. Let me go back to what I was sharing. Well, let's see. Oh, Zoom presentation. Julie, what do you see right now? Do you still see the hope thing?
I'm seeing your screen.
You see my screen. Okay. Screen sharing meeting.
And Lynn, you should be able to share.
What I see is view options at the top, but here, let me see if I'm able to share.
It says Lynn is requesting, okay, agree.
So can everyone see that? Julie, do you see that?
Mhm.
Okay. So I wanted to invite everyone to our Care Partners Workshop, which takes place on the 3rd of October, which is, believe it or not, just next week. And it is by Joyce Beadle, who is a dementia educator and consultant with many years experience in assisting people in caring for their loved ones with dementia. So this particular one is called Helping the Helper Help You. Because as Joyce tells us very frequently, when it's necessary to have a helper in your home, sometimes it can be a disaster because you're not used to having people in your home. You may not know exactly how to help them. And sometimes you set them up for failure just because we don't understand what we're doing. So it's 4 hours. It includes lunch, which is why it looks like it's 5 hours. We thought we'd give you an hour for lunch. And we're asking for $10 for Joyce's workshop, or workbook that she developed. So that is coming right up, and we'd love to have you sign up. And you can see the Eventbrite link is on the flyer. One other thing that I want to share with you, because we got lots going on, and this is hot off the presses, so we're pretty excited about this particular one. And this is Wine, Women, and Dementia, which is a documentary that was developed by a woman out of Portland who has a blog called Stumptown Dementia. And this particular documentary is her experience following her mother's death from dementia, where she got in her RV, as you see the RV on the flyer there, and traveled around the country meeting people who had responded to her posts and her blog. And it's amazing. Soon we'll be sending out something with a trailer on it, but we invite everybody to attend. We even have 2 showings. One is on November 2nd in the evening, and the other is on November 4th in the morning. So if it's hard to drive at night, you can come on Saturday morning, and everyone is invited. Our next education in October, we plan to welcome Dr. Randall Wolcher from OHSU for, I believe, at least the 5th year that he has presented for us, one of our most popular presentations. He is the neuropathologist at OHSU who does all of those brain autopsies on people who have died from dementia or complications therein. And he's always fascinating, and I personally can't wait. So thank you all for attending. Melanie, will you share your slides with me so I can send them out?
Sure.
That would be wonderful. Great information. So unless anyone else has questions, we will call it good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn.